MKISC, for those of you who don't know anything about the organisation, some of you, of course, will be very familiar, but for those of you who don't know about the organisation, it was actually set up after 9/11 as a response, really, to try and connect communities and bring people together through high quality and shared arts experiences. As we all know, sometimes Islam and Muslims are viewed in rather negative light, for all sorts of reasons. And actually, if we look historically, Muslims were at the forefront of so many discoveries such as medicine, maths, astronomy, art, calligraphy, architecture, list goes on. So I think that that idea Anna has was to bring people together over positives. MKIAC operates over diverse settings across the city. And the latest project is called One Journey Connecting Communities, and it's focusing on strengthening community cohesion. MKIAC also delivers an annual Art in the Park festival, which I've been invited to this year, which I'm really excited about. But unfortunately, because of the current COVID restrictions, it has been postponed to the 31st of July, and we are hoping that it does go ahead, but obviously only if conditions allow and if it's safe to do so. In the meantime, MKIC are giving monthly virtual events, and those will continue. So please do check out their website, their Facebook page, and Twitter, and do get involved in future events. A little bit about me. My name's Abda Khan. I am a lawyer by profession. I'm also a writer of fiction, mainly. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat. And I've written 2 novels, Stained and Razia, and I'm just finishing my 3rd novel. I was delighted to be asked to participate tonight because Poetry on Prescription, that title really resonates with me, because poetry has been like a medicine for me on a personal level. What a lot of people don't know is that I do write quite a lot of poetry, but I tend not to share it. And that's because I tend to use poetry as medicine for myself, just to try and deal with difficult issues that I might be going through, things that worry me, or things that I just want to get out of my system. And when I was 18, I lost my mum. She went abroad to see her brother who was terminally ill, and she never returned. And that was a really difficult period in my life. And up until about 6 or 7 years ago, I could not speak about my mum like this. I could not speak coherently. I would just start crying if anybody mentioned, even as a woman in my 40s, it would be very difficult for me to hold back tears and to speak in any kind of a coherent way about my mum. And it's only when I started writing poetry about her and exploring the trauma that had kind of like been buried, I guess, for a very long time, that I was finally able to do what I'm doing now and talk to you about my mum without falling to bits. So it was through the process of poetry that I finally came to terms with my mother's death. You can't, you never forget, and the pain never goes away. The pain of losing the person who you were closest to never diminishes, but it's poetry that has allowed me to deal with really complex issues that all kind of stemmed from that bereavement and that trauma that I suffered. So I can speak with some degree of personal experience about the benefits of poetry and creative writing generally. And in fact, when I teach creative writing, I always start with the benefits of creative writing. And the benefits are numerous and immeasurable almost. So I think really it's a positive step to try and encourage people to take part in poetry and be part of something that really can bring you so many benefits. I was going to read a poem about my mum tonight, but I decided not to. I thought I'd just read something a bit more upbeat because it would make everybody sad. So I wrote this little poem in honor of our guests, our wonderful speakers tonight, because they are poets and I've read their poetry. It's amazing. So this little poem is called Words Matter. I wrote this today, so I'm sorry if it's not brilliant or very polished, but it's called Words Matter. Words matter. They can stir or soothe. There is a purity to poetry that speaks the truth, that rescues your mind from the jaws of fear, and paints a picture from the words you hear. Words have the strength to lift and heal, to raise someone up so that they may feel the power of each word touch their heart, bring a tear to their eye, or just laugh out loud, or inspire, or embolden, or just let them know that they matter in this world. They are not alone. So here's to the writers, the wizards of language, the storytellers and the poets and the wordsmiths, whose words don't hide behind spin or PR, are not sugar-coated or veiled, but are what they are. There is potential for anarchy when honest words are let loose, but better that than a world without words that speak truth. So it was just my little, thank you, just my little contribution, because I really do think poetry is that one form of art that really does speak truth. You can't hide when you write poetry. You can't, go into a corner with it. It's so important, especially today, now, through COVID, through the pandemic, through loss of life, through loneliness, and all the problems that people have endured. I think that, spoken word and poetry have a very, very special place in lifting people's spirits and helping people to come to terms with the difficulties that they've been facing. So on that note, I'm going to introduce our first guest. Our first guest is Dr. Claire Ellis, who is Head of Teaching and Learning at The Reader and specialises in the teaching of shared reading. Her work explores how literature can inspire others and improve well-being across a wide range of settings and places, including dementia care, mental health, and criminal justice. She studied English literature at the University of Liverpool and has worked for The Reader since 2007. Welcome, Dr. Claire Ellis.
Lovely, thanks for having me. Exciting to be here.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. Could you just tell us in a little nutshell? I know I read your blurb there, but can you just tell us what you actually practically do in terms of your role at The Reader?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, The Reader is a national charity that brings people together from all walks of life and settings around literature. And I guess what I particularly do at The Reader is to teach people how to do shared reading, because we're a volunteer-led charity, and shared reading is our kind of core outreach kind of program, if you like, where it's not like your regular book group. The poem is read aloud live in the session, and then people are given the opportunity to really personally connect and share feelings and thoughts around it. So yeah, I kind of help people to do that, really.
Mm-hmm. So what, sort of generally speaking, what do you perceive the benefits of not just reading but shared reading in particular? I was interested in that. What benefits can people gain from shared reading?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it makes it very democratic, so that regardless of anyone's literacy background, whether you class yourself as a reader or not, it doesn't matter, because essentially all people have to do is turn up in the room, and there's a trained kind of group leader there who will read the poem aloud, if you like. So yeah. Everyone experiences it live in the session. There's no kind of expectation to have to read anything beforehand, so it's live, and there's lots of opportunity to pause and discuss, so people, I guess, not only have an opportunity to better understand their own narratives because of their interactions with the words on the page, but also can see themselves through the prism of other people's narratives who are also sharing their thoughts about that exact line in that moment. So it makes it very democratic and very collaborative, I guess.
Yeah, very open, isn't it, and inclusive, I guess, in a way, in a way that's, I suppose, solitary reading isn't. Now, I was reading a blog of your highlights for 2019, and that included 57 reader lead courses, 480 new reader leaders delivering the sessions, and so much else that was delivered personally around the country. Now, at the end of that blog, you stated, we are looking forward to another dynamic year of learning in 2020. Now, nobody could have foreseen what 2020 was going to look like. So what have the challenges been for you as an organisation, considering how much of your work was done on a very personal, face-to-face level? What have the challenges have been for you as an organisation through the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, because I guess prior to March 2020, everything was really delivered in person. And then suddenly we found we couldn't do that. And so we've had to work out how to provide people with different options to still access the shared reading experience. So obvious things, yes, we've tried to take many of our shared reading groups online and make them accessible to people that way. We also have converted our training courses to now go online so we can keep volunteers coming in. But we also have found that there are some people who just don't have access to a computer. You know, people can assume that people do, but it's not the case. So we've also designed a new shared reading over the phone initiative, where people can be trained up and then can be matched with maybe someone who's quite isolated, lonely, referred into our service, and can receive a weekly phone call where a poem is shared over the phone and people get a chance to connect. So it's working out different options. We've also we deliver a lot in prisons. Yeah. And obviously during, you know, and still now, you know, we used to have trained people going into the prison and reading, and then that's had to be all paused. So we started designing these kind of reading poetry story packs, if you like, that could simulate the shared reading experience and kind of be posted, if you like, through the door, you know, literally through people's cells, so we could still reach people. And we've also developed some new work with kind of national prison radio as well, and podcasts. So still lots of learning, and still people that sadly who are still not engaging with those options as well. So there's still I think
really we hear a lot of everybody's in the same boat. I find that that's not true, because, you know, like you say, some people don't have access to technology, or they're not technologically savvy. So, you know, they can't participate in that way. So it's great that you're doing things like the telephone and through the post. I mean, a lot of people listening and watching today may be part of an organisation where perhaps they haven't thought about shared reading before. So what advice can you give to anybody who might be thinking about shared reading as part of the services that they might provide to enhance the options available to their service users?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to get in touch with us. You know, we've been delivering it for a long time, and we could maybe help you and provide some support to help you be able to do shared reading. I think there's basic things that are important to bear in mind. You know, there's the approach that when we bring a piece of literature to life, you would never have in a shared reading group a group leader say trying to encourage discussion about, I don't know, historical context of the writer. It's very much liberated, if you like, from that, and people are encouraged to think, what do these words mean to me personally, and how do they relate to the life I've lived? So I think it's helping people to understand that if you're interested in doing shared reading, it's understanding that personal approach to the literature, you know, that we try and bring about. But, you know, we've got the, if people get in touch, then we can help signpost people to our services. So yeah, please do go on our website and get in touch. We've got a special hotline actually for people to be able to reach out to us and get involved.
That's fabulous. Yes, if anybody's listening and you know, it's something that you haven't maybe thought of before, but you're interested, definitely reach out. Thank you so much, Dr. Ellis. I could chat to you all evening about this, but unfortunately Anwar's put me on a very tight schedule and I mustn't stray. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for joining us this evening.
Pleasure.
Right, our next guest is Jennifer Lee Guy. I hope I've said your surname right. Jennifer Lee is a poet, an editor and a critic. She was born in Bebington and grew up in Liverpool. Jennifer is a fellow of the Complete Works, a Ledbury poetry critic and contributing editor to Ambit. Her work is published in the Blood Axe anthology 10, Poets of the New Generation, and her debut poetry pamphlet is Kismet. Jennifer is a PhD researcher in creative writing at the University of Liverpool and the winner of the Northern Writers Award for Poetry 2020. I'd like to invite Jennifer Lee to just share some of her work with us now, please.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Abda, for that lovely introduction. It's really lovely to be here tonight with you all. And I'd like to say thank you so much to Anwar for this very kind invitation. So I'm going to read a few poems to you this evening. So the first one is called Self-Portrait at 4 Years Old. This poem is from my pamphlet, which I've just mentioned, which is called Kismet. The title Kismet translates to fate or destiny. And some of the poems in my pamphlet, they draw on fragments of early childhood memory and experiences as well. But like any other poem, it's mixed also with imagination and re-envisaging of things. Self-portrait at 4 years old. I am the smallest one in class, the only Oriental at a primary school in Birkenhead. At 4 years old, I learned to read better than a child twice my age. My first school uniform, grey cardigan knitted by an aunt, grey skirt, grey like an English sky, yellow and brown tie, shiny Clark shoes bought by my grandfather with money made by washing dishes in a restaurant kitchen. In the playground, I hear something I don't understand, an occasional refrain. Chinese, Japanese, don't forget to wash your knees. First school photo, mother reminds me to smile for the camera. I don't tell her that I never feel like smiling at school. I am learning to be silent. I am learning how to keep secrets. I am learning how to be alone. At home, I read fairy tales with my mother. Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Rapunzel, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Only Snow White has black hair. Her eyes are brown like mine, but her skin is white. What colour is my skin, Mama? I listen to nursery rhyme records on my father's turntable. Bar, bar, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Back from the casino, father laments my love of books, my pleas to buy them every week. Because in Cantonese, the word for a book sounds like the verb to lose. I put on my best smile for the camera.
That was lovely.
Thank you. So I guess that I found what you were saying, Abda, earlier really inspiring in terms of what you were saying about coping with loss, and I think also for me as well, poetry has been a way to talk about loss too, and to deal with both personal and ancestral trauma, as well as also finding a voice as well, and articulating painful experiences.
I noticed that you use the themes of like family heritage and sort of cultural background. It seemed to be a big influence in your writing. Is that something you've thought about from a very young age? Because that poem seems to suggest you have.
Yes, well, I mean, I think that reading was always something which was very important to me from an early age, and I think because it opened up a world of imagination. So I studied English at university, but I don't actually come from a literary background. I mean, I'm second generation British born Chinese. So my parents, my grandparents came to Liverpool in the 1960s. And my parents both came to the UK when they were in their adolescence. And so I'm the first person in my family to go to university. So yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I found it so interesting when you talked about your grandfather in that poem, about the Clark's shoes, and because that reminded me of my childhood, and the sacrifices that parents would make to buy you things, or in your case, grandparents. Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it, how that generation, had to work incredibly hard, I think, to be able to provide for us. Is there another piece you'd like to share?
Yes, there is. Well, I think that leads us really nicely to my next piece.
Oh.
So I wasn't really sure what to choose, but I think that I'll read this prose poem, which is about my grandfather.
Oh, lovely.
Right, so this poem is called Soak Inside My Grandfather, after Ilya Kaminsky. When my grandfather was young, I believe he was a farmer in Guangdong during Mao's regime. There was war on peasants. It was a foul time. Black clouds menaced the sky. Curses, 10,000 reports of darkness, deaths of humans, animals. People ate sweet potato leaves, tree bark, wild herbs. Mao said, people were not without food all the year round, only 6 or 4 months. Babies were abandoned, unspeakable horrors took place, brutalities beyond comprehension. My grandfather escaped from China, came to Liverpool as a seaman on the Blue Funnel Line. He jumped ship. In this fair city, he worked in a restaurant, though everyone said he looked more like an actor in a black and white film. He walked as though he was compelled by some external force. He had coal black hair, perfect posture, an elegant body which moved like water does, sometimes still, sometimes flowing, often running deep. His earth-brown eyes were intense. They had witnessed things you and I could only have nightmares about. He was the saddest man I ever met. I remember his voice, how it conjured the sound of the erhu, a 2-stringed instrument, birds chirping, horses neighing, maidens undulating in dance, the pain of sorrow. In his 50s, Liverpudlians were kind to him when he visited cafes like the Cardinal on the corner of Whitechapel and Stanley Street. They liked him, this Chinese man in a trilby, long overcoat, polished black shoes. He would always tip generously because he knew what it was like to serve. My grandfather died on the streets of Liverpool, the port city he loved. It was strangers who rescued him from the pavement when he fell one bright afternoon in March. His heart, the yang in the yin-yang system, shaped like a lotus bud, broke. his friends were the people around him. 8 years after his death, I saw my grandfather in his best suit, sitting alone again in his favourite cafe with a cup of English tea, a slice of fruitcake. He was smiling. I had never seen him smile or laugh before. He invited me to join him, gave me a lucky red envelope with notes inside, told me he did not mind me writing about him in my future poems, in a language he had never learned or could ever speak. Thank you.
Thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. That was so lovely. Thank you so much. Inspiring words there from Jennifer Lee. On to our next guest, and that is Andrena Lianne. Andrena is an independent spoken word artist and poet from Bradford. Her work is published by Verve Poetry Press, and her book is entitled She, and it was released in November 2020. She is a passionate poet who writes about her own personal life, current environmental issues, social stigmas, homelessness, poverty, and discrimination. She talks openly about her past struggles and what she has had to endure. She found her voice and encourages others to find theirs through poetry and self-expression. Andrena shares her love of spoken word through performance. She's an influential and uplifting voice in Bradford, spreading her love of poetry in her local community. She was selected as Bradford Community Champion, and she was nominated for the British Indian Awards 2020 in the Media, Arts and Culture category. Andrena, welcome.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me today.
Oh, it's so lovely to have you on board. Do you want to? Would you like to share first, and then we can have a little chat?
Yes, I've got 3 pieces. They're not very long.
Okay.
I'll just start. So the first poem is called Behind the Glass, and it's a poem I wrote just as lockdown started last year. Behind the glass. I'm missing my routine, watching spring flourish, watching the trees blossom, leaves green. I'm missing my link to nature. Running free in the outdoors is my therapy. It's what I need to complete me. I love breathing in the air free from toxins. As I'm running, panting, gasping to breathe, all the negativity, all the stress starts to leave. I miss the swans squawking, threatening me with their stare, them not quite understanding why I'm actually there, but them wanting me to acknowledge that this is their peace, as much as it's my own stress release. I'm appreciating the things that were hidden in between, my own silence and my busy routine. The beauty in things I failed to see, because I was too lost in me. I couldn't absorb things properly. So now, amongst the fear that I sometimes feel, I'm holding it together and keeping it real. Laughing out loud, I've not laughed this much. Keeping at a distance, but spreading love that reaches the soul beyond touch. I'm soaking in the sunshine from behind the glass, listening to the whispers of the grass, to its silence, to walk under the clear blue sky. I want to stand where the rays of the sun lie. I miss my taste of spring, and I sometimes feel like I'm suffocating, but I'm trying to make sense of what I don't understand, making most of these days unplanned. Whilst we stay indoors, we heal our lands. So here through my glass window is where I'll stand. Thank you, that's my first poem. And my second poem is called Different, and it's based on my own perspective and how I've come across racism in my own life. It's called Different. Am I so different to you? Why does this hate breed from an implanted seed that I never planted? Why do your eyes look at me with hatred that you try to disguise, but your body language shows me so clearly that you don't want to be near me? Am I so different to you that you choose to hate, to fuel and discriminate? Do you see this as acceptable behaviour? Instead of fueling hate, we could be the generation to make this world greater. Be the change of past history and start learning from our neighbours. Why do you hate me? Why are you threatened by the layers of my skin that shines in a different shade to you? Yet within, our internal systems are the same. Our blood flows like identical twins, and our body are clothed with the keystrokes of our identity. Why am I seen as the enemy, labelled into categories that seem less discriminating? So people feel comfortable in communicating. But that's not stopped people from hating, because different is seen as different in society's system. And I'll always fall the victim to this hate, to this untreated disease that feeds the ignorant. Yet I'm hopeful that there will be a cure to this hate that sees me as different. Thank you. My last poem is a bit more upbeat, and it's about my own experiences in lockdown and how I found comfort in going for walks on my canal. My dear canal, I thank you for the dear memories you've helped me create. The mornings I'd awake to increase my heart rate, running amongst the pebbles and the stones, listening to the canal and the river flow, sometimes gushing in the wind, sometimes silent. A piece of paradise where the mind is exercised by nature's guidance. My dear canal, I have watched you blossom in all seasons, a place of hope and new meaning. I have watched vibrant branches shed their leaves, from autumn reds to copper trees, listening to the ducks squawking amongst the breeze. I have watched the cows lay upon the fields as their newborns are revealed. I have watched baby cygnets grow, spreading their wings as they take their first swim. The happiness that it brings, the smiles from passers-by, the warmth, the peace, the sweet release of life. My dear canal, I thank you for being my hope in lockdown, when restrictions were made and we couldn't leave our town. You were full of creative inspiration, and that helped ease the discomfort of isolation. You became the arms of comfort, like a mother's heart beating. You kept us believing that better days will arrive. My dear canal, I thank you for the positive impact you've had on my life. Thank you very much.
That was absolutely beautiful, Sharena.
Thank you.
All different, really, but also lovely. I wanted to ask you actually about growing up in Bradford, because you're a Bradford lass like me. I don't live in Bradford anymore, but I'm a Bradford born and raised. How big has the city been as an influence in your writing, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's more so as an adult. I think it's been a huge influence, because as a child I didn't quite understand my surroundings as much as I do now. And yeah, Bradford now is like a huge impact, because it's like just a community based of, you know, creative people, and it's deeply inspiring.
It is, isn't it? And it's a very warm place. And people haven't been, it is, you know, people of Bradford are very warm and welcoming. Now, I've read quite a lot of your poetry, and you do write about some really difficult and taboo issues, a bit like I do with my fiction. What drives you to explore such difficult themes and difficult issues? Like, where do you get the motivation from?
I think it's because they need to be, you know, these topics need to be addressed and they need to be voiced. And because I've experienced a lot of the issues that I do speak about myself, I feel it's important that I can raise my voice for other people, and in hope that they'll find the courage to do the same.
Yeah, because you never know how your words might help somebody, do you? Because you don't always find out, I always say this, you don't always discover how what you say or what you've written might have helped somebody, but it might. So I think that, you know, poetry has a really unique place, especially with what we've been facing recently, and on a personal and professional level, but also on a personal level. How has writing poetry throughout lockdown helped you get through lockdown, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so usually I would write lots of very deep, I wouldn't say negative, but sometimes my poetry is not very positive. I found in lockdown, I've been very particular in writing positive poems, because I just want to keep people uplifted. And, you know, there's been so much negativity anyway, and I've really tried to be encouraging and supportive and uplifting, rather than, being as negative, sharing negative things.
Our next guest is Faiza Malik. Faiza is a life coach and the founder of Fluorescent Coaching. She's a trainee counsellor in her final year of studying counselling and psychotherapy and has a level 1 in Islamic psychology and counselling. As a volunteer within Spirited Minds, she produces articles for the blog and is involved in various projects around mental health awareness. As a freelance writer, she writes about her own experiences and observations in the hope that others may relate and to inspire people to seek support and break cycles. Good evening, Faiza. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's lovely to meet you, albeit virtually.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day we can all meet in person. I wanted to ask you actually, it's really interesting the work that you do. What has been your experience personally and professionally about how lockdown has affected people's mental health? We know it has, but what have you experienced? What has stood out to you?
I think, what you were saying about losing your mum, actually, I lost my dad 8 months ago. So that was during the first lockdown. And I was thinking obviously about how, we're all kind of experiencing loss, and that's, the loss of kind of how we used to live, physical, connection, and obviously like health and, losing people that we love. So I think, for me, that's been the biggest thing that people have come to me with, like anxiety and just this sense of loss. So that's been the biggest thing. I think, in terms of what you were saying about the writing and that kind of helping you and helping you kind of heal through your grief. I think that's been my experience as well. That's one of the things that helped me not heal so much, because it's still something that I'm sort of healing from, and it's still a kind of trigger when I hear about things, but it very much helped me make sense of my own experience of it, because everyone's experience is completely unique. Just even when I'm homeschooling at the moment, like so many other parents, and everyone has different things going on in their lives, different reasons, or I can't sit down and get this one to do that, and by the way, so and so's their grandma's got COVID or whatever, and we've lost this person and that person. So everyone's experience is completely unique. But yeah, that seems to be obviously unfortunately like the main theme, and heightened anxiety.
Yeah, I suppose, I think it's like I said before, like when people say we're all in the same boat, we're not really, because we're all in different situations, and some people might be in a cruise line and some people might be in a dinghy. Mm-hmm. So it's very different for different people from different walks of life. So I think the loneliness is another aspect. People have had bereavements, and people have had other disruptions, economic consequences, losing jobs or being furloughed or and such like. But I think the loneliness has been very difficult for some people. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, obviously we see, in hospitals, people can't have their families there, same in care homes, like the lady was saying before about not being able to carry on and go into places and read. Where I was doing my placement as well, that closed down. So the places that people would go to get help normally as well, they can't go there. And not being able to see people and get that kind of support. It is completely different, over doing things digitally, although I think people have tried to make kind of clever ways to kind of make it work. But yeah, absolutely, I think I think it's a massive thing, and even for the kids, they miss that kind of social interaction as well, missing your colleagues and stuff. So yeah,
I must say, one of the things that's really helped me is I'm part of a book club, and we've managed to keep going virtually, and I think that's been really important to me and all the other women who were part of that book club, because it's just kept that contact going, and that even though we're meeting virtually, we're still getting together and discussing themes from the book, which lead to discussing other things. So I guess adapting and having that human interaction in whichever way you can get it is still quite important. And I suppose creativity can be a part of that, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have seen lots of little kind of book clubs pop up in my news feeds, and I love that that's happening, and maybe people are getting more time to read as well. But like you said, I think the experience is quite unique, I think, because a lot of, obviously, with the kids being at home, I mean, I'm talking about my personal experiences because I do have the girls at home. I think where people would be getting support online. So for me, like doing the coaching, or, as a student counsellor, because there are so many people at home, it makes it quite difficult to talk about, how you're feeling and whatnot. So yeah, absolutely. Whether it's kind of, reading and joining a book club, or whether it's sitting down and writing about your own experiences, doing a creative writing course, something like that, that can be quite therapeutic, where you're prevented from talking about it.
I guess because we're all living and existing in very strange sort of circumstances. You can't have those outlets, as I was saying before. You don't have your normal outlets. You don't have your normal sort of buffers that you would rely on when things get a bit much. But there's something else that I wouldn't say I'm anxious about it, but I've had conversations with quite a few people about this. But I often think that when lockdown is over, and I mean truly over, so we can get back to how things, well, as near as things used to be, with no restrictions. How do you think people are going to find adjusting back to normality? Because I can see people getting a bit anxious about actually then going back to the way things were before, having lived through effectively a year, probably it might be a year and a half of lockdown effectively by the time we actually get around to some sort of a position where we can interact freely and do things like, I was just thinking, I did some events in 2019, and people filling out questionnaires and sharing pens and just really little things like that you don't think about. So what advice would you give those people who might be feeling a little bit anxious about the return to normality, actually?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're so right. It's kind of, I feel like we're all going through this kind of collective trauma in a way, and it's even the anticipation of things going back to normal, like you said, it can cause anxiety. I think that where as much as people can, if they can speak to someone and get support, whether it's online, on a phone, or through a creative outlet, if you start sort of processing some of that now, so that actually when the time comes, it won't be as scary, and you'll have done some of the work, and you'll have kind of processed it a little bit. Obviously, I think that once things do go back to normal, as normal as it can be, then I think that a lot of people will just need to realize and recognize that they will need that support, and we'll just kind of have to deal with things as and when it comes. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's fascinating, isn't it, how life has changed so much, and then it will have to change back again when we eventually come out of this. It was absolutely lovely speaking to you, Faiza. Thank you so much for joining us, and that's such valuable input, especially in terms of how creativity and this sense of togetherness can help us all. Right, so our next artist is Andrena Lianne. Andrena Lianne is an out-and-out proud Black working-class lesbian inspirational speaker and poet. In January 2015, Andrena founded Poetry LGBT Open Mic Night. Poetry LGBT is a warm and welcoming space for the LGBTQ+ community to come together to share their experiences and creativity through poetry and spoken word. Andrena recently started Adult Survivors Open Mic for survivors of abuse to share their story through poetry. And I'm going to invite Andrena now to please share some of her wonderful work with us.
Thank you, Abda, for the introduction. So the 3 poems that I'm going to read are going to be from my debut collection of poems. This book is called Charred, A Survivor Speaks Her Truth to Inspire. Slight trigger warning here, there is mentions of attempted suicide. So I thought I would read these poems specifically as they are to do with mental health. And I think it's so important for particularly the Black community to see more people of color talking about mental health, because it's quite taboo in our households. So it's really important for me to read these poems. So the first one is called My Mind. The mind is a powerful tool. It should be on the national curriculum. We don't learn enough about it at school. Life experiences and stress often get my head in a mess. I find ways to de-stress, unwind, and clear my mind with mindfulness, meditation, relaxation, and long walks in the park, staring at the trees and the green grass until at last my mind is clear for a bit, then life sets in and it takes another hit. It's like my mind knows what triggers to press in the end. Work, family, friends, and transport issues drive me round the bend. For me, living in London town, my life is full of ups and downs. Sometimes things are nice and things go right. Other times it's shit, and that's just the reality of it. I love life, and living is what I love the most about life. I know I've got to take care of myself, put myself first in real terms. My health is my wealth, as a wise person once told me. Being mentally healthy is one of my top priorities. I'll try my best to set aside my fears and park any negativity from self and others and be the best me that I can be. Thank you. This one's called Anxiety and Stress. Over the past few months, I've been experiencing high intensity anxiety and stress, been feeling like important aspects of my life are in a mess. What the fucking heck? I mean, seriously, I've been getting this unrelenting pummeling pain in my neck. The more I try to concentrate and think positive thoughts, the more it feels like my neck pain, anxiety, and stress are working in cohorts. If you know me well and you're reading this, you're probably thinking I'm taking the piss. From the outside looking in, my life looks bliss. You're probably counting my numerous possessions, examining my beautiful family unit, somewhat successful career, poetry, LGBT, my creative open mic, baby. I beg you, look past all of that and focus on these facts. I'm telling you now, I found it hard to cope, although not at the stage where I would contemplate a rope. I tried mindfulness, meditation, relaxation, long walks in the park, but my mind worked overtime. I found it extremely hard to keep my thoughts in line. For now, I'll say no more about this gigantic head sore. They say time is a healer, and with time, it passed, and I was able to see the other side of the grass. Thank you. And my final poem for this is called Changed. At the beginning of a particular year, I'm not ashamed to say I didn't want to be around, but I feel differently now. Spent too much time in my feelings, too much time in my head. I was an emotional mess. All the things that had happened to me had me tumbling down. I could not hold a smile long before it turned into a frown. I didn't want to be around, but I feel differently now. My friends and family didn't know how to help me at the time. Deep down, I knew they wanted me around. They're the reason I'm still here feeling safe and sound. Not so long ago, I didn't want to be around, but look at me now, standing proud. Thank you. And those poems are from this collection, Charred, A Survivor Speaks Her Truth to Inspire. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrena. Very moving and bold, and I have to say that your poetry is. I've read some of your other poetry as well. It's like very it's very deeply personal, isn't it? Your poetry. You really speak from the heart. So, how would you say poetry has helped you on a personal level through life's journey and navigating your struggles?
Wow, poetry has helped me immensely. My partner Jermaine, she got me into poetry in February 2014, and it has changed my life. Like, I've been able to express myself in a way that I just wasn't able to before. You know, I used to smoke 20 cigarettes a day. I don't smoke anymore. You know, I could easily just do things to harm myself before finding poetry. And now writing is so therapeutic. I love that this event is called Poetry on Prescription, because it is like my therapy, my counseling, my prescription, and it doesn't harm me. Do you know what I mean? Like
I totally get you. Yeah, I totally get you, because I found the same myself as well. So next we have Miss Yankee. British Ghanaian writer and spoken word artist Miss Yankee has captivated audiences from London to Paris to New York and as far as Melbourne. Her energy is unmistakable. Every word she spills is carefully crafted, performed with passion and loaded with authenticity. As part of the international collective Flow Poets, Miss Yankee is mentored by the 7 times Grammy Award nominated Natalie, the florist Stewart, and hosts at 2 of London's most popular spoken word shows, the Chocolate Poetry Club and Mind Over Matter. Miss Yankee, take it away, please.
A writer's pen is a weapon. It should never be formed against oneself, but trust me, it shall. Used well, it is a well of well filled with water from the purest source. A force. My pen is law, a stream of raw truth and self-expression. My pen gives me lessons. My pen is a teacher whose words I sometimes only deep in hindsight. Reading back through past rhymes, I travel time and push past lives aside, jumping into my future. My pen is benevolence. My pen could never be broken. My vibranium quills are dipped in immortal ink that spills truth so real that if you're lying to yourself, you will get caught in feels. My pen always keeps it real. My pen is a wand so strong that only the gifted could wield its power into such carefully crafted lines. I scribe magical rhymes sublime. I beam channels of light into minds. My pen is not always kind, but it always respects me. My pen is a king with an amethyst crown. Together we travel within and without. My pen has never let me down. My pen is a healer. Given a blank page, it finds a safe space to channel rage and express pain, to explore time and space, love, inner knowing and faith. A blank page is a place of no shame. Somewhere you can go to process emotion in silence, a place where you can meditate, say what you have to say without having to defend or explain. Not everything is for the stage. Some stays between you, those pages, and your pen. My pen spills spells on sheets. My pen eats metaphors and similes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My pen is always hungry. My pen loves what I deliver. If my ink is a drug, then I guess my pen is a dealer. My pen draws cards that win me chips. My ink is rich. I flip that, double it, split that, treble it. Damn, that's a lot of chips. My pen is the shit. My pen is a killer. My pen is a reaper. My pen slays heathens and demons. My pen is my keeper. Together we ride through the elements. My pen can handle any enemy in any season. My pen knows the trenches and the tenements. My pen is a sword by which I live and die. My pen is my honor. My pen is my rhyme. My pen is my reason. My pen is the keeper of untold secrets. My pen is a fountain of wisdom when you deep it. My pen streams a synchronized sequence of memories and thoughts. My pen is 11:11, 22, 33, and 4:44. My pen is a master, a sensei, a samurai, a mentor. My pen is never less. My pen always gives me more. My pen is loyal and consistent. It never keeps me waiting or second guessing. When I give my pen my time, it always showers me with blessings. My pen connects me to myself in my purest form. My pen never settles. My pen does not conform. My pen weathers storms, fireproof in the ashes. My pen is a phoenix. My pen is reborn. My pen is mighty. My pen is resilient. My pen is magnificent. My pen is transformed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Yankee. That was absolutely brilliant. A performance, I'd say, in the truest sense. You are a performer. I've seen some of your videos. Absolutely amazing. The performance side of it, did that come to you naturally, or is it something you had to work on?
No, it didn't come to me naturally at all. And hearing Andrena speak, I was having flashbacks to when I started reading my poetry, and I'd read from a page with my hands shaking. And in between the breaks, just to avoid speaking to other humans, my anxiety would be so bad. I'd go and stand outside and chain smoke just to avoid having conversations with people. So I've always had it in me, and I've known that I've got it in me, but I did not actually attending poetry nights and becoming a part of the community made me realize, oh, actually, I can do this. This is a really supportive place to, if you are going to go out of your comfort zone. It was a really supportive community for me. I was very lucky to stumble across an incredible event called Chocolate Poetry Club, and then later Mind Over Matter. So yeah, it just happened organically over time. I'm not the same poet I was when I started.
I guess the more you do something and you enjoy it, the better you get at it. So once you discovered you actually enjoyed it, I guess you just got better and better, and that really shows in your performances. Now, your poetry covers like a wide range of like topics and issues, from love to politics, domestic violence to nature, and like everything in between. What drives you to write about such diverse and wide-ranging topics? How do you get the focus to do that?
I feel that as writers, we're just reflecting our life on a page and our thoughts on a page. And to think that somebody only thinks about, I mean, I think about mental health advocacy a lot, and I think about women's rights a lot, as you can tell from my work, but they're not the only things that I think about and the only things that define me. I'm a mother, you know, I like to have fun. I like to explore emotion and love and all of those things. But I also think that I feel personally, for me anyway, that there has to be purpose behind the work that I do. That's what really drives me. There are people out there that don't have the luxury of being able to articulate information into words. So a big part of what I do is sharing information, is storytelling, and is speaking up for people who have been silenced. And I think poetry is an incredibly powerful tool for promoting empathy and understanding. Listening to a fact or a figure about something, for example, the relationships between mental health and domestic violence, which is huge, specifically given what's been happening with the figures during lockdown. Reading the stats is one thing. Hearing a story, hearing someone's real experience, I really believe promotes community, promotes empathy, promotes understanding, and is incredibly helpful in terms of having victims and people's experiences seen and heard. Yeah.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. I mean, I did a project, Sidelines to Centre Stage, about 18 months ago now, and I worked with women in refuge who are survivors of DV, and also Muslim women who'd been to prison and were part of the rehabilitation process with Muslim Women in Prison Project, and worked with them, and we collaborated and you know, produced this poetry. And then I remember the performance at the MAC, especially here in Birmingham. So many of the men came up to me afterwards and said, you know what, I'm going to go back and I'm going to speak to other men and say, you know, because I think sometimes you can tap into something that somebody has never been tapped into before. You know, poetry can do that. It really has that power, doesn't it, to actually pinpoint something, a nerve that somebody didn't even know existed. So it had a profound effect. I would expect the women, but had a profound effect on a lot of the men that came, and it changed their perspective on what actually goes on in society. I think because they don't you know, abuse women. I think they sometimes forget there are lots of people who do abuse others. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The power of words can really move people.
And I mean, with Poetry Prescribed, which is the project that I run, we've been running for 3 years now. 3 years in November we've been going, and we do just that. We prescribe poetry in the form of workshops. And everyone always says, well, how do you get people to write? Because I would say at least half of the people every session, when we're allowed out in the public, they're not writers. The workshops are for everybody. The workshops are about community and are about discussion. So what we're essentially doing, we use shared reading actually within the workshops, but also reading out loud and watching performance poetry, is using poetry as a catalyst for conversation. Watching somebody talk about their depression, for example, and then talking about that poem is a lot easier than somebody pointing questions about you and your life. So I do find that it's a really helpful way to engage people in conversation that may otherwise be quite uncomfortable. And
Absolutely.
you're directing the conversation on the poem. And if people want to then relate it to themselves and talk, I find that does happen in a safe space and in a workshop setting if people feel safe. But the catalyst for that conversation is always the poetry.
Right. Next, we have a video, I believe. Now, this is performed by the London Syrian Ensemble, and the Qanun artist is Sana. Hope you all enjoy it. Last, but by no means least, our final poet for tonight is Ruqayyah Fatuga. Ruqayyah is a poet from London of Ghanaian and Nigerian heritage. Her work joins conversations on overlapping identities, faith, and culture as self-affirmation. Ruqayyah won the Spread the Word Poetry Prize in 2017 and the Roundhouse Poetry Slam in 2018. She was shortlisted for the Outspoken Poetry Prize in 2018 and 2019. As well as performing at UK venues such as the British Museum, Royal Albert Hall, Trafalgar Square, and the Ivy, Ruqayyah shared poetry at Cosmopolis Festival Barcelona and Owano Says It All Rotterdam in 2019. Ruqayyah has facilitated workshops across the UK and been commissioned by Bloomberg Philanthropies with Vanity Fair, English Touring Theatre, and Kyra TV. Ruqayyah is also a member of the Nana Poetry Collective. Ruqayyah, let's hear your wonderful work tonight.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm going to share 2 poems today. So this first one is called Voice Could, and it's inspired by Maya Angelou. Bismillah. Little Maya thought her voice could kill. Vibrations pouncing off her tongue like the drop and swing of a noose. That's the thing about abuse. It sits like death in your living room, on your cabinets, under your skin. It can wring you dry and file you thin. Abuse will tell you your voice has killed, so you run from your own sound. Guilt pressing on your heart like your feet on the ground, running while lactic acid grows a fireball in your throat. Gripping silence like a coat to protect you, when silence only neglects you and weighs down the truth. Miss Angelou gave a voice back to that youth, collected herself in her arms and spoke the keys to open mental attics and let countless voices free. Let your words out. The fireball that burns you is amazingly bright. Your voice can draw you out of your permanent night. It's okay to be scared. There is power in fright when it leads to the courage that lets your voice lift in flight. It might feel like the world is closing their eyes, drawing the shutters and dropping the blinds, but I promise there are ears that value your voice. I promise you that I value your voice. I'm sorry I've been part of the world that left you no choice, that laughs too easily, that listens shallow, hearts too hollow to hear. But did you ever think your voice could bring life? Vibrations launching off your tongue like a life buoy swung on a rope. That is the wonderful thing about hope. It makes you determined to swim when you've just been keeping afloat, and healing is not easy. Letting yourself be heard. But the journey of speaking out starts with one word. That was Voice Could, and I'm going to share one more poem, which is about Ghana and me being there and in funerals, because sometimes at funerals they have a hired mourner, and I found that it's something that crosses through a few different cultures, and it's someone who attends a funeral to lead the crying and lead the release of emotion, which I just thought was an interesting concept. Okay, so this is hired mourner. Bismillah. If my body is a vessel, most days I am a stagnant stream, something that gathers like parasites, like envy, sits in my stomach as I watch a woman perform a death wail. Her guttural cry peeling the last repression off the afternoon. She speaks the Volta River's tongue, but needs no words to open the laden space like a deep horn or a gunshot, like a ribbon cut. You all are welcome to call upon your tears, even the source lapping below the surface. Come to find closure and release in the damp earth we have watered together. Dance now. Stamp your resent into the ground. Let it fly off your fingertips and limbs as you bobobo to the beat. She moves the mourners and I watch. How she can access her pain and free it so easily. How she has mastered melting into grief while others knot ropes around it. While I have tied mine so tightly to my stomach and throat that I've forgotten how to make a sound, to turn a sobbing gut into a howl, find better homes for pain, and how to teach poisons to fountain out, teach stagnant wails to stream. Thank you.
That was awesome, Rukia. Thank you so much. Wow. I've noticed, I was reading a few of your other poems. I've noticed that, you know, your identity seems to play a big role in your poetry. So how do you feel poetry enhances, you know, your personal connection, the connection you feel with your cultural and your religious heritage? Because I think both play a role in your poetry, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I think both of them do play a role. And I think they've both kind of helped me with connecting with the people, and I suppose that's what we want poetry and literature to do, to sort of start conversations and connect us with people. So I think especially writing about back home, so I'm like the second generation born in the UK. My parents were born here, and I have been lucky enough to visit Africa many times, but there is a disconnect there as well. But I found through writing about Ghana and about different places in Africa that I visited, and even if it's just my mom sharing it with someone from there and starting a conversation, it does increase that connection. And also being asked to write about my faith and speak about my faith openly in places that I probably wouldn't have brought it up before. It's kind of something that, you know, you carry with you and people know, but to declare it on stage is kind of a different, it's a different thing, and it is a beautiful thing to bring that into conversation where my own bravery might not allow for in a normal situation.
Yeah, so you feel like the poetry, I guess, in a way, has kind of bridged those gaps that you felt, you know, because you weren't born, you know, in your parents' native homeland, and you were born here. So I guess maybe growing up, you felt there was a slight disconnect, which the poetry has helped to sort of, you know, to close that divide a little bit. And I think a lot of us do feel that as we get older, we find we connect more with our culture, our heritage, our religion, you know, and our family background, don't we? And I think, do you think that's something that comes with age?
Yeah, I think it could be something that comes with age, especially there's that sort of youthful thing of wanting to, you know, fit in or be like everyone else. And as you get older, I guess you're sort of looking back, and especially as you're growing up and, you know, becoming the adults, becoming, you know, losing your parents and losing the elders in your family, and you are then the one to uphold culture. And it's like, okay, so what is important to me, and what is it that I want to pass on and to keep as something.
I know what you mean, because when I tell my daughters they need to you know, learn a certain dish that my mum taught me, they're like, well, mum, you can make it. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to be around forever, and you need to know how to make it, and it has to be, you know, these spices. So I know exactly what you mean. You are a very confident performer on stage. I've seen your videos. You're very much very confident, and you've also performed in some very prestigious venues. And note to self, to change career so I can go to lots of
no
venues.
I'm coming for your job. I want to do your job, honestly. I'd love to be an author.
What advice would you give to a poet who aspires to become a spoken word artist? Because there's a difference. I you know, I can read my poem out, but I'm not a spoken word artist as you are, and so many others tonight, you know, have shown that they are. So there might be somebody watching out there who doesn't have the confidence at the moment, like get on stage and perform. I'd love to do that one day. I'm not there yet, but you know, what advice would you give?
Yeah, when Miss Yankee was speaking, I was actually shocked about the nervousness she said she felt, but I can totally relate to that, because I was definitely the same when I started first sharing poetry. And I actually I used to do a lot of drama, so I did like performance, but when I first shared poetry, I was so nervous because of how personal it was. I wasn't hiding behind a character. It was just all me and my experiences and words. But I think literally just practice, just doing it as much as you can, and a lot of Zooms that you can go to, but also when things open up again, a lot of open mic nights are really safe spaces where you can definitely find places where you feel comfortable, and where you're encouraged to tell your stories, and yeah, I think just practicing it. And also finding people that you love how they perform, and just taking inspiration from them and staying close to your the people who spark something in you. So I think all of that.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I've gone over time, so I'm going to get in trouble now. But thank you so much for sharing. A wonderful role model you are, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Wonderful work. Thank you. Deputy Mayor is Councillor Mohammed Khan, another Khan, which is always good to see. He has a role in the budget, finance and housing within Milton Keynes Council. He's run a restaurant for 20 years. He advises private landlords on investment, property and management. He grew up and was educated in Milton Keynes and enjoys working alongside the community on many, many issues. Thank you so much for joining us, Deputy Mayor. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was some fascinating people. I really, really enjoyed your company. And I want a big thank you to Anwar Kashim. He does some fascinating stuff he does for our communities. And thank you very much for that, having me today. It's absolutely a pleasure. Me as a councillor, I joined in 2012. Grown up. Can you hear me all right? I think we're getting signal cutting off. Hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think the camera's gone. Anyway, I'll carry on. I grown up in Bletchley, Milton Keynes. I'm from Bangladesh. I was born in Bangladesh. My dad was in early 80s, and he brought us here. And I decided to run for the local council early 2012. The reason I joined because I want to make difference to my communities.